Hello, I'm Tony Myers on the Charisma Podcast Network, and this is Pushing the Boundaries, Living Supernaturally podcast. Every one of these podcasts are created to guide you to acknowledge your full healing. By his wounds, you were healed. So I want you to live that out. We aren't to live a life plagued by illness or injuries, but we are to live our lives with a healthy body. Moses, at 120 years old, had keen eyesight and strong muscles under the Old Covenant. We can attain that as well under the blood covenant of Christ. Today's episode is no different. But before I introduce today's topic, I want you to write down a miracle that you've experienced in your body. Do it right now. Every one of us has experienced a miracle at one time. Remember it. Now write it down. A specific area of your body that you need a miracle in. Then say to yourself, Jesus healed that, so I am healed of this. Send me an email at tonyjustbelieves@gmail.com with your miracle request, and I will speak life over that need. Today's episode is to shake your trust in your physical senses. They are at enmity with God. What you see can kill you when you base your beliefs off of what you see. Let's talk about it today. I'm at a restaurant, sitting outside on the patio, eating a good steak. A fellow walks up and introduces himself. He's the husband of one of the waitresses, whom I had prayed for and had seen healed from back problems. I hold out my hand for a handshake, and he clumsily uses his left hand to shake hands. I look to his right hand and notice there's a huge gash with stitches on the palm of his hand. I asked him what happened. Then I just say life to that hand. It's healed and comfortable. He dismisses that statement and we keep talking. After our conversation, I reach out my hand once again. This time, he uses his right hand. I grip it very firmly and look at him. There is no indication of any pain whatsoever. I release his hand and say to him, "Do you realize you just used your right hand?" He looks at his palm and sees the gash and stitches were gone. He is amazed. He then tells me he'd been commanding the pain to go and the gash to leave, but nothing had ever happened. He had once been in a wheelchair and was supernaturally healed of that, but he could not seem to get healed of the deep cut on his hand. His experience is one that is common to many believers. The majority of people that call me believe in healing and have prayed for other people and seen them healed miraculously. Furthermore, they have no doubt that it is God's will to heal them. Last week I spoke about the two questions every person who is seeking healing needs to answer. Most people who call me have done just that. and have even been healed of one or multiple things in the past. Lastly, and more importantly, they've all been taught to rebuke symptoms and command them to leave. You are probably asking yourself, why are these people not able to have the healing for themselves? Where are they missing it? Today I'm going to explain the spirit, soul, and body connection in order to show you where their Achilles heel is and help you to realize why you haven't seen the results you are expecting. Keep in mind that when administering to others, I don't have to teach them this in order to get them healed. I did not have to have this discussion with the man at the restaurant, nor did I have to explain it to the woman with the wicker chair from the week before last. Understanding this connection is especially crucial to receive your healing without having someone else minister to you. It will also make you more effective in ministering to others. Romans 8, 6 through 8. For to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. Because the carnal mind is enmity against God, for it is not subject to the law of God, neither indeed can be. So then they that are in the flesh cannot please God. We have two contradictory types of information coming at us all times from two completely different sources. We have information coming to us from God through the Holy Spirit in us. Then we have the information from the physical world coming into us through our physical senses. It is easy to see the contradiction between these two information types. God says we are to heal every manner of sickness, and nothing by any means shall hurt us. Then we hear the expert opinion that certain illnesses are incurable and contagious. God says we are healed, but then we feel our bodies screaming with pain, that we are sick. The organ through which the physical senses relay information to us is the brain. It is the control center for the body and is the carnal mind that Romans 8:7 is referring to. These two types of information are coming into our spirit, which contains our conscious being or soul. Then, based upon our beliefs, we then make a choice and we choose either life, the Holy Spirit, or death, the brain. We are not our brain. It is the control center for the physical body, but it doesn't make any decisions. Our mind or soul is the decision maker. The brain has two responsibilities: to gather information and send that information to our soul. Then the brain directs each organ how to respond according to the response back from our soul. It is the control center that controls the response of each bodily function. It is the perceptions and beliefs of our heart that are sent back to the brain. That is how it works. So we aren't aware of it at a conscious level. The carnal mind is at enmity with God, is saying the information coming in through our brain is in direct conflict with the things of the Spirit. The carnal mind, the brain, is not subject to the law of God and cannot be, because it's a physical organ and not the decision maker. The brain at some point will die and cease to function because it is flesh, so that those who live in the flesh cannot please God. In other words, those that make their choices by their physical senses cannot please God. This is all inclusive in all areas of life, whether we're talking about living a righteous lifestyle or being healthy. Why do you sin? Because you hear or see something and react to that in a wrong manner. Why do you believe that you're sick? Because you hear, see, or feel something that leads you to believe that you're not healed. Therefore, you are sick. Nearly every symptom is caused by the brain's reaction to the physical world. Therefore, if we are making decisions based only on the physical senses, we are walking in the flesh. Paul stated it quite well in 2 Corinthians 5:7. For we live by believing and not by seeing. We live by trust and not by seeing. We live by trust, not by our physical senses. Romans 8:9-12, but ye are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit, if so be that the Spirit of God dwells in you. Now, if any man have not the Spirit of Christ, he is none of his. And if Christ be in you, the body is dead because of sin, but the Spirit is life because of righteousness. But if the Spirit of him that raised up Jesus from the dead dwell in you, he that raised up Christ from the dead shall also quicken your mortal bodies by his Spirit that dwelleth in you. Therefore, brethren, we are debtors not to the flesh, to live after the flesh. For if ye live after the flesh, ye shall die. But if through the Spirit do mortify the deeds of the body, ye shall live. For as many as are led by the Spirit of God, they are sons of God. We do not live by what our physical senses dictate to us, because it isn't the truth, nor can it be. The body appears to be dying because of the sin of Adam. But the righteousness of Christ brings the body life, because we are led by the Spirit of God and are sons of God. Therefore, the Holy Spirit is giving life to our bodies. According to our physical senses, we may appear to not be healthy, but that is the deception of our physical senses, which is fueled by what we feed our brain. However, if we believe the Holy Spirit is giving life to our bodies, then our brain has to respond to that. Likewise, if we walk by our physical senses, then our brain reacts to that, because that's what we fed it. A third of what we see is not reality. I do mean physical sight, because sight is based upon perception. Half of what you hear really isn't what's being said. Once again, it is based upon our perception of what the person is saying. These statistics are based upon scientific evidence. Crime scene witnesses offer a perfect example of this. One witness alone is not reliable. If there are many witnesses, then nearly every person will have seen something different. Some will see a tall man, others short. Some will see a shirt as red, others as blue, so on and so forth. This is because our beliefs and perceptions are filters for what we see. Have you ever been cut and not realized it? The majority of us had that experience. You feel no pain until you see the blood. Another way to easily prove how untrustworthy our physical senses are is this. Put a fake arm in front of you. Put your real arm behind your back. Then have another person take a sledgehammer and hit the fake arm with it. The huge majority will literally feel pain in their real arm. The minority that don't feel pain will still have a negative reaction, one of shocking or wincing. We get that same reaction in real life. If you see someone cut themselves, most will literally feel their pain. Watch a man get hit in the family jewels. And what happens? Men especially will feel the victim's pain. Putting it bluntly, the physical senses do lie. And that deception can be a matter of life and death. There are many reported cases where people have died, but the cause of death did not match the scene. For instance, a person dying from hypothermia when the temperature they were in wasn't within the range of hypothermia. In other words, it wasn't cold enough for the body temperature of that person to drop down to the level that causes hypothermia. There have also been cases where a person has bled to death with no arteries being severed. I recently heard of a case where a man survived being locked in a freezer. The freezer wasn't working, so he wasn't in danger of hypothermia. However, it was airtight, so the man couldn't breathe. He saw a spot in the freezer that he believed if he broke through it, it'd give him enough air to be able to breathe. He kept hitting it until he heard it crack. Once he heard the crack, he believed he had knocked it out, and within a few minutes, he could breathe normally. The next day, he was rescued to find out that the freezer was, in fact, still airtight. He should have died. The point is we don't live by our physical senses, but by trusting God. Just because you see something doesn't mean it's true. Our bodies are not the confirmation of whether we're healed or not. The Holy Spirit inside of us is the only confirmation we should need. I once prayed for a fellow whose spine had rods in it. I just told him bend over, and he did just that. The doctor was amazed. He shouldn't have been able to bend over with those rods, yet he could. X-rays confirmed the rods were still there. Yet he never had a problem with his back again. Ronald Coyne was a healing evangelist whose right eye was surgically removed after an accident. At the age of 7 in 1951, he received his sight after being prayed for. Yet he had no eye at all. He was seeing through an empty eye socket. Imagine the contradiction in that. The organ that is responsible for sight is not even there. Yet he was able to see. You can look this up on the internet and see multiple videos of him demonstrating his miracle. The definition for medical science further enhances the teaching you cannot trust what you see when it comes to anything that is redeemed through the cross. The definition of medical science is the study of the physical world through observation and experimentation. In other words, walking in the flesh, not in the spirit, or walking by sight, not by faith. Romans 8:5, for they that are after the flesh do mind the things of the flesh, but they that are after the Spirit, the things of the Spirit. This verse shows us that what you believe in is what you have your mind set to. If you are focused on the things of this world, that is what we get. Because that is where our expectation is at. The things of the flesh are what our physical senses bring into us. Therefore, if we live basing our decisions off of our physical senses, we die. But if we seek the things after the Spirit, then we focus on the things of the Spirit, we have life and peace. What we feed into our brains is what shows up in our bodies. I see a skin blemish. Then I get worried that it might be skin cancer, and I start expressing that concern to others. Then what am I feeding my brain? An expectation that it is skin cancer. Then what will happen? More than likely, it will be skin cancer. On the other hand, I see a skin blemish and start thinking about the Holy Spirit giving life to my body and the truth that I'm healed, then I just directed my brain to move into health. The physical body, including the brain, is merely the vehicle for our soul and spirit while on this earth. Just like a car, it doesn't make any decisions on its own. It has to take directions from the driver. It doesn't have a choice. If we walk by sight and believe that what we see is the gospel truth, then we are like a driver taking directions from his car, and we become slaves to our body. Paul uses strong language here. The carnal mind is enmity against God when we are led by it. The struggle goes as far back as Adam and Eve. What was the cause of the transgression? That's right. Eve was led by the physical sense of sight. Genesis 3:6 through 7. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise. She took of the fruit thereof, and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. The question then is, are you going to be led by your physical senses or by the Spirit of truth? The Holy Spirit always speaks life, while being led by the physical senses always leads to death. The more human knowledge has increased based upon sight, the more human beings have been led into choosing the physical reality over the spiritual truth. One giant man named Goliath had all of Israel trembling. A small child chose not to be led by what he saw and slew that giant. 12 spies were sent out to see if the land was plentiful, but only 2 chose the spiritual truth over the giants they saw. At least back then, they saw literal giants. Today, we choose to be in fear over something you can only see with a microscope. A microorganism shut the world down as it chose to believe the physical reality over the truth of God. For the record, during that time, my church stayed open and we saw many people healed on Sundays and throughout the week. Not one congregation member died from it. Armed with this knowledge that the spiritual truth is greater than the physical reality, you can choose to be led by the Holy Spirit and not by the physical senses. Now, to answer the question, why is rebuking symptoms not the most effective way? Because then the presumption is that we have to fight the symptom. Pain causes the brain to increase the signals of pain to that body part. So instead of seeing an increase of comfort in the body, you become more conscious of the pain. The brain doesn't pick up on the word go. It picks up on the word pain. If your focus is on the negative, then that is increased. If your focus is on the affirmative, that is what is increased. Speaking out, my body is more comfortable, then increases the comfort in your body. Instead of weak muscles become strong, a more effective way is my muscles are strong. Another way to think about it is like kind produces like kind. The type of seed that is sown will reproduce that type of seed. A negative seed is only capable of producing a negative outcome. A positive seed, a positive outcome. The same is true for how you think about doing an action after prayer. Many call it an act of faith, which implies that in performing that action, you have earned your healing. Others have the mindset of performing an action to test out if you're healed. If you present it as a test it out and see if the symptoms are still there, then what is your belief or mindset upon? That the end objective may or may not occur. Jesus did not present it as such. It is done now. Go. The better way to approach this is you are healed, therefore you can do the action. This teaching is to push the boundaries of your thinking, to get you past the point of seeing to believe, to shake the barriers that say what you see is the truth. You can let your physical senses dictate to you what the reality is, or you can believe the spiritual truth over the physical reality, which then changes the circumstances. For instance, you hear a bad report from the doctor. You can let that report shake you and put fear into you. Or you can recognize that the doctor or those that read that report are only going by their physical senses, not by the spiritual truth. Their expectation is based upon sight, not truth. Whose report do you believe? The Lord's, or a diagnosis based upon observation and experimentation? Be blessed, be healed, and be a blessing. Thank you for watching my videos, for coming to my channel. I truly appreciate it. And now, if my teachings or if my books or anything that I do bless you, then I do want to give everyone an opportunity to sow into this ministry prayerfully at the leading of the Holy Spirit. We're in the process of raising funds for the movie, and we've got a ton of things going on. So, if you feel led to give, simply go to my website. There's a donation button there. But there's other ways to give as well, such as word of mouth, just telling people about my channel, just telling people about my books, even telling them my testimony. That is very helpful. Buying my books, sharing my books, buying my merchandise, all helpful things, all sowing into my ministry. Thank you very much. There are many ways that you can do it. You're not limited. So I just want to say I appreciate in advance any way that you spread the message of the kingdom. God bless you.